Welcome back to the rise of Meta VR. I'm Emerson VR, and in this episode, it's all about the moment virtual reality truly entered the world. Last time, we saw how a teenager's garage experiment became the Oculus Rift, and how Facebook's $2 billion bet on VR changed tech history. Today, we're diving into the years that followed, the golden age of Oculus Rift and the birth of modern VR gaming, and the brutal race between the HTC Valve and the PlayStation to define what VR would become. This is the Rift era. March 2016. After all of the hype, testing, and developer kits, the Oculus Rift CV1 officially launched. Sleek back headset, 2 OLED displays, built-in headphones, it looked futuristic, nothing like the clunky dev kits before it. For the first time, consumers could truly buy a VR headset. The price tag was $600. To run it, you needed a powerful gaming PC, sensors mounted around your room, but people didn't care. They were ready to jump into VR. Tech reviewers called it the start of a new reality. Gamers lined up to play. It wasn't perfect, setup was tricky, frame rates could dip, and you still needed a bunch of cables, but it worked, and it was VR. For the first time, you could stand in your living room and feel like you were truly inside of a game. Just weeks later, another VR headset dropped, the HTC Vive, powered by Valve's Steam VR. And suddenly, VR wasn't just an Oculus playground anymore. The Vive introduced room-scale VR, and you could physically walk around a map scale instead of just sitting or standing still. 2 laser-based stations scanned your room, hand controllers let you pick up objects naturally, and that single feature, walking, changed everything. People started saying Valve is for gamers, Oculus is for dreamers. The competition was fierce, but it was healthy. Both headsets pushed each other to improve. Valve focused on freedom and motion tracking. Oculus focused on polished accessibility and content. It kind of reminds me of Samsung versus Apple. Apple is better, by the way. It was a digital arms race. Each update, each firmware patch, each exclusive title made headlines. For early adapters, it was like watching the console wars all over again, but in 3D. Between 2016 and 2018, VR found its soul: games. Developers built new genres that only existed in VR. You couldn't just port flat-screen games, they had to be reimagined for VR. Superhot VR turned bullet time combat into physical movement. Beat Saber turned rhythm gaming into a workout phenomenon. Job Simulator, Arizona Sunshine, and a bunch of other games, every game tested what immersion could do. It was VR. YouTubers and streamers helped massively. Seeing people flail around their rooms with VR headsets made VR both funny and fascinating. It was new, raw, and unpredictable. People loved VR, and yet it still wasn't mainstream. PC VR cost around $1,000 when you included the hardware, sensors, and computer. That meant only a small percentage of gamers could actually join the fun and play VR. Oculus needed a way to break free of the cables, and that idea would lead them to their biggest innovation yet. During this period, Oculus wasn't just making headsets, they were building an entire ecosystem, kind of like Apple. The Oculus Home software became a VR hub where players could customize virtual homes, launch games, and chat with friends. They also released Oculus Touch controllers, arguably the most important accessory in VR history. Before Touch, players used Xbox controllers. It worked, but it didn't feel right. With Touch, every hand movement, every gesture became natural. You could grab, wave, throw, and high-five, and point, and like so much other things. For many, it wasn't just movement that VR finally clicked. It wasn't just seeing a world, it was being in a world. Developers embraced it instantly. Gamers added hand interactions and object physics. Suddenly, VR wasn't just a gimmick, it was a legitimate new platform. Late 2016, another challenger appeared, PlayStation VR. Sony took the idea of VR and made it affordable. For under $400, anyone with a PlayStation 4 could plug in and play VR. It wasn't as high-end as the Rift or Vive, but it was easy to set up and worked right out of the box. That move brought millions of players into VR for the first time. Games like Resident Evil 7, Astrobot Rescue Mission, and so many more showed what console VR could do. So by 2017, the battlefield was set. Oculus Rift was a polished and PC-powered VR. HTC Vive was a room-scale and open-source VR, and PlayStation VR was a mass-market and console-friendly VR. Each one shaped VR differently, but Oculus still led the innovation race behind the scenes. Oculus's content wasn't just staying on desktops. They wanted VR to feel human, portable, wireless, social, so many things. This era gave birth to Oculus Medium, a sculpting app where you could take 3D art with your hands. It also launched Oculus Venues and Spaces, early attempts at virtual social worlds. You could watch concerts, sports, and hang out with friends in VR. These were all first hints of what Meta would later call the metaverse. But 2017 also brought challenges. The hype cooled down a little bit, media started calling VR a fad, sales slowed, developers worried. And then Facebook reassured Oculus. Palmer Luckey quietly left the company. Brendan Ibe, one of Oculus's founders, stepped away too. The indie startup spirit was gone, yet behind closed doors, engineers were working on a secret project, something that would remove the biggest barrier in VR, the PC. By 2018, rumors started swirling around about a standalone Oculus headset. No cables, no sensors, no PCs, just a VR headset and controllers. That project would become the Oculus Quest. But before we get there, it's important to understand what the Rift accomplished. It proved VR was real. Every demo, every headset sold, told people that VR wasn't a gimmick anymore. It inspired developers. Thousands of studios learned how to design for presence, scale, and interaction. And it also built a foundation. The lessons from the Rift's tracking tracking, display tuning, and ergonomics shaped everything Meta makes today. Even though it was weird, expensive, and niche, the Rift era gave VR its identity. The Rift helped VR very much. People who used it remember their first moment inside VR, the second you realize that your brain believes what it sees, the moment you don't leave. Ask anyone who played Lone Echo or stood on the edge of a cliff in the climb. You can still feel that vertigo years later. That's what the Rift era was. The first time humans experienced the real presence in a digital space. The first time that VR was great. By late 2018, the Oculus Rift was fading, but its DNA lived on. Oculus shifted focus to standalone hardware, affordable, wireless, and social. The Oculus Quest was on the horizon, and soon the company that started in a dream in a garage would transform into something even bigger, Meta. The Rift era ended, but its spirit did not. So that was episode 2, the Rift era. Next time, we explore the bold leap that changed VR forever, the birth of the Oculus Quest, how it cut the cables, opened new worlds, and brought VR to the mainstream. If you're enjoying this series, please follow the podcast and check out my channel, Emerson VR, where I play VR. Thanks for listening, and as always, I'll see you inside the headset.